What happens when a dying man spends 9 years playing a game he can never put down and then clears it? He doesn't get a trophy. He gets transported inside. Lee Han-soo was not the kind of person anyone would call remarkable. He spent most of his adult life in a hospital bed, plagued by an illness that never fully let him go. One day, flat on his back and bored out of his mind, he stumbled onto a single-player game. It had old-school two-dimensional graphics, the kind that looked like a relic from another era. It was free, so he installed it without expecting much. Within days, he was obsessed. The game was called Dungeons and Boulders, and it played by one brutal rule. One wrong decision, one bad call, your character was gone forever. No respawn, no second chance, start over from zero. Most people quit within the first week. Lee Han-soo did not quit. He played through school. He played through graduation. He played through a job and then through getting fired. 9 years passed. His body grew weaker. The game grew harder. But on a night like any other, his character finally stood at the threshold of the final boss's chamber. His hands were trembling as he pressed the confirm button. Excitement lit up every nerve in his body. Then the screen flashed white and a sound like a bell filled his skull. Heat spread across his skin. His ears rang. The world went dark. When he opened his eyes, there were no fluorescent lights above him. There were torches, flickering, smoking, ancient torches. And all around him stood warriors built like boulders, their arms crossed, their eyes forward. A man at the front of the room was shouting commands in a language Lee Han-soo had never heard before. Yet somehow, he understood every word. The man bellowed for the young warriors to step forward and choose their weapons. Lee Han-soo looked down at his hands. Thick, scarred, enormous. Muscles stacked on muscles, veins running like ropes beneath skin the color of ash. He had become a barbarian. His mind was still catching up when the warrior standing beside him began to hyperventilate. The man beside him whispered in barely contained panic. Was this a scene from the Dungeon and Boulder game? The breath left Lee Han-soo's lungs. He was not the only one who had been pulled through. Before either of them could say another word, the commanding man at the front turned his gaze toward them. Lee Han-soo said immediately and calmly, "It was not me." The man's eyes shifted to the panicking warrior beside him. No words were exchanged. No trial was held. The axe came down in one clean motion. The man was dead before he hit the ground. The room did not flinch. The chief spoke without emotion. The soul of that warrior had been filled with evil spirits. The young must forget what they just witnessed. Lee Han-soo stood still and breathed and thought very carefully. The people from the real world had been brought here as what this civilization called evil spirits. Discovery meant death, instant, public, without appeal. The ceremony continued. Names were called one by one. Lee Han-soo did not know his name in this body. He watched the numbers thin and made his calculation. When a name was called and nobody moved for the full seconds, he stepped forward, shoulders back, head high, no hesitation in his stride. The chief looked at him with no suspicion whatsoever. The gamble paid off. His name in this world was Bjorn, son of Yangdao. Now came the second problem, choosing a weapon. Barbarians in Dungeons and Boulders had no magical ability, but their raw physical power was unmatched. Most players chose swords or hammers for the visual thrill of it. 9 years of dying taught Lee Han-soo something different. Without a moment of hesitation, he walked to the rack and took the shield. The shield had carried him to the highest levels in the game. It would carry him here too. The coming-of-age ceremony ended, and the real world began pressing down on him immediately. In this place, every warrior owed taxes, failed to pay, and the penalty was execution. There were two ways to earn: kill monsters in the dungeon or work in a tavern. Taverns did not hire barbarians. Before he could think it through, the chief's daughter Anna appeared behind him, excited and fearless. She asked how he could be so calm, how he could think so clearly. She said she had never met a barbarian like him. He gave her a short answer. She promised to repay him if they both survived. When he asked whether she feared death, she looked at him like the question confused her. For a warrior, she said, a life without battle would be more terrifying than dying. That settled something in his chest. Bjorn stepped into the dungeon. The entrance swallowed the light instantly. What waited inside was not a game level. It was a dark, breathing, poisoned place, and he was alone in it from the very first step, separated from the others in a dark zone that only appeared once every 100 years. Bjorn moved by touch and instinct. His food bag had a hole in it. His water supply was non-existent. His right ankle was caught in a poison trap within minutes. He did not cry out. He lowered himself to the ground, opened the trap with both hands, and pulled his foot free in silence. The poison crept up his leg. Sensation faded fast. Something was watching from the darkness, waiting for him to bleed out. He cursed the goblin loudly to draw it out and heard nothing. So he collapsed, deliberately, forehead cracking against stone, stars splitting his vision. He did not make a sound. He lay still and let his body act as bait. The footsteps came slowly. The creature was suspicious even of a corpse. Then it threw pebbles at him to test for movement. He did not flinch. When the sound of delighted jumping told him the goblin was close enough, he surged upward and swung. He missed the first punch. The goblin was faster than expected. But this body was not his old sick body. Something surged through the muscles, and he grabbed the creature barehanded. He beat it until it stopped moving. For all of that, the reward was a single 9th grade magic stone worth roughly 1 piece of bread. He let himself feel the absurdity of that for exactly 1 moment. Then he crawled forward on his elbows and knees to spare his poisoned foot, moving faster that way, staying below the traps. The system warned him that blood loss was approaching a lethal threshold. Then, in the distance, crystals glimmered. He crawled toward the light and found an adventuring party, 5 people, seasoned, and led by a blond man. They had saved him not out of kindness, but because they thought he knew a secret passage. They offered a healing potion and threw it at him like scraps to a dog. He drank it. The pain was extraordinary. He thanked them anyway. The blond man mentioned something, a book about dimensional instabilities at dungeon entrances, a phenomenon that occurred once every century. Bjorn had apparently stepped through at exactly that moment. Worst luck in 100 years, the man said. Bjorn watched them leave, picked up his shield from where it had fallen, and kept moving. He had always known this game was punishing. Now he understood it was also real. The dungeon's first floor was brutal not because of the monsters, but because of the people. Bjorn learned that quickly when he found a man willing to trade watches for overnight guard shifts. The man was warm and smiling and suspiciously eager to keep things to just the 2 of them. To warm, to eager, that specific kind of kindness that costs something later. Bjorn slept lightly. He let himself drift just once, just for a moment. He woke to a hammer descending toward his face. He rolled. His shield came up. The man's panicked expression confirmed everything. The fight lasted seconds. The man ended up bleeding on the ground, explaining through broken teeth. Barbarian hearts had recently been identified as a rare magical material. Someone was paying enormous sums for them. He thought confessing would save him. Bjorn smiled at that, then brought the shield down. His first kill. The system confirmed it with a soft chime. He stripped the body of everything useful and kept moving. On the second day, he found the elf. She was pressed against the wall of a side passage. One hand over a long stab wound across her abdomen. Her amber eyes were bright with pain and suspicion. Her name was Owen, and she did not trust him at all. When he approached, she dropped to her knees immediately, begging him not to hurt her. He stepped back, pulled herbs and bandages from his pack, and threw them across to her. She stared at the medicine and asked why he was helping her. He said, "Does helping need a reason?" Then he explained the only thing he actually needed, someone to trade watch rotations with through the night. They swore oaths, him on a warrior's honor, her on her tribe's name. He handed her the pocket watch and told her to wake him into hours. He was unconscious within minutes. She let him sleep the full 2 hours without issue. By morning she had already decided she trusted him more than anyone she had met in the dungeon. The story of how Owen ended up injured was worse than he expected. On her first night in the dungeon, the man she partnered with had waited until she slept. She woke to him with his pants around his ankles. She had escaped, and she had taken something with her as she ran. Specifically, she had cut off a part of him that he would very much miss. Bjorn absorbed this information and suddenly understood completely why an entire organization was hunting her. The group was called the Correction Union. Their leader carried an information stone, a device that communicated within 300 meters. They had numbers, coordination, and a personal reason to be relentless. Owen had no equipment, one wound that hadn't closed, and a bounty on her head. Bjorn looked at the situation and did the math. She had value. She was an archer with fire magic, close combat and ranged support, the classic partnership. He asked if she wanted to team up properly. She said yes before he finished the sentence. The first tracker they killed together was fast and silent. Owen shot the arrow. Her hand shook after. The tracker's information stone kept transmitting long after the man was dead. When the silence stretched to long, the voice from the stone announced that the tracker had met with misfortune. Then it raised Owen's bounty to 10,000 gold coins. She looked up at Bjorn with frightened eyes. He told her simply, "Don't worry, I will take you away from here." He had already decided when he killed the tracker, she was worth protecting. That was enough. They pushed north toward the second-floor entrance, Owen leading with her keen elven senses, Bjorn clearing whatever came at them head-on. The coordination was natural from the start. She had her sight. He had his shield. Between them, almost nothing got through. The bounty climbed to 20,000. Then a group of human adventurers tried to ambush them using goblins as a diversion. They herded monsters from the front while an archer hid in the shadows and waited. The arrow caught Bjorn's left arm at the elbow. Poison. His arm went dead from the shoulder down. One-armed, bleeding, surrounded onto sides. He sent Owen invisible into the dark with her new essence ability and held the line alone. What followed was ugly and desperate, and it worked. Owen took down the hidden archer. Bjorn took down the rest with his teeth when his hands gave out, literally, tearing open a man's throat with his mouth. Owen emerged from the bushes breathless and unharmed. She stared at him and started crying. He took the potion she offered without comment, swallowed it, and told her to strip the corpses quickly because they had less than 40 minutes. Before the first floor closed, they made it through the second floor entrance with seconds to spare. The second floor dropped them into the goblin forest. Dark earth, layered canopy. The smell of rot and pine mixed together. Owen said it felt like coming home. She was smiling like a child even knowing goblins were everywhere. For 4 days they hunted and learned each other's rhythms. He baited and held the center. She ghosted through the grass and picked off targets from positions they never saw coming. By day 6, a group of goblin swordsmen that would have been catastrophic on day 1 was just another wave to push through. A goblin archer essence dropped, a rare find, worth far more than anything else they had collected. Bjorn gave it to Owen without ceremony. She absorbed it and gained an invisibility skill. A rival party tried to claim the essence for themselves. Bjorn told them to come on, no matter how many of them there were. They looked at him and left. On day 7, they returned to the first floor, came out of the dungeon with over 180,000 gold coins for Bjorn alone, the highest return any barbarian in the tribe had ever recorded. The tribe erupted. They surrounded him. They screamed his name. Something inside him stirred at the noise, something warm and embarrassing that he immediately suppressed. Owen was across the plaza surrounded by elves, and when their eyes met she mouthed something that made her face go red. Bjorn mouthed back, "See you tonight." The reunion at the Black Whale Tavern was delayed by 30 hours, because Bjorn slept through an entire day on the street. He arrived to find Owen and her sister Trustja, who looked at him like a man she needed to evaluate for criminal intent. Trustja placed 350,000 gold coins on the table, the market value of the essence Owen had absorbed, and told him to take it and leave. Bjorn ignored the money and asked Owen directly to become his long-term partner. Owen's eyes lit up immediately. Then Trustja explained the elf race's rules. The first adventure had to be completed solo, and after that, Owen had to adventure with her sister. The partnership was over before it had begun. The accounting that followed was almost amusing. Owen still owed him 180,000 based on their original 9-to-1 split. Trustja had brought exactly that amount. She had calculated it in advance. He called it despicable. He meant it as a compliment. When Trustja finally left, Owen slumped over the table and said she had never once disobeyed her sister in her life. But she had tonight. They drank. They ate. Owen got through 1 cup and started staring at him with hazy eyes, telling him he looked very handsome. What she thought was a romantic invitation turned out to be Bjorn dragging her through stretching exercises to test her new essence attributes. She cried out and groaned, and the man in the next room nearly lost his mind. When she realized what he had actually meant, she muttered in disappointment, "So it was just to check my abilities." Late that night she fell asleep leaning against his arm without asking permission. He blew out the candle and stared at the ceiling and thought about taxes. The following morning they sold every piece of equipment they had carried out of the dungeon. Combined total, 1.45 million gold coins. For the people entering the dungeon for the very first time, it was absurd. Before they parted, they walked together past the central plaza and saw soldiers executing a man for failure to pay taxes. The crowd rushed forward afterward and dipped bread in the blood for luck. Owen hiccuped in horror. Bjorn stared without blinking. Annual taxes for a barbarian, 700,000 gold coins, and they climbed every year. He filed that number away and went to the library. The library was enormous, and the administrator there cast a spell on him the moment he arrived. A guidance magic that pulled relevant books toward him as he thought of what he needed to know. He spent the rest of the day reading 6 books in sequence. He learned about the world's creation through a witch's curse that had driven humanity into a single castle. He learned about alchemy, about the wars between barbarians and elves, and about evil spirits, beings from another dimension who stole bodies, hunted by the royal family and temple alike. The summary of that last book was simple: do not speak of things only someone from outside this world would know. He also found that this game world had been running for 150 years, since the first king's death, the day the game was supposed to begin. The last book he read described the dimensional instability that had dropped him into the dark zone. On his first entry, when he looked up from the final page, the sky outside was dark. He needed a new partner for the next dungeon. Owen was gone. He had 27 days. He found Anna at the Angry Bullhorn Inn, the chief's daughter, asleep in the library the last time he had seen her, now training harder than anyone in the tribe. She had come to the library because of something he had said to her before the first dungeon. Think more before acting. She had taken it to heart so seriously it made him feel something close to guilt. He asked her to train with him. She knocked him flat in under 3 minutes. Then he asked her to become his partner with an 80-20 split. She grabbed his hand before he finished the sentence and said she did not understand ratios, but she trusted him completely. He spent the next several days making preparations that would have seemed extravagant to anyone watching. He paid 800,000 gold coins to the barbarian tribal chief for a soul engraving. The immortality technique. The chief had nearly killed him on the spot for knowing the term before asking. Bjorn explained he had found it in the library. The chief's paranoia softened into admiration. To cover the suspicious size of his gold supply, Bjorn told the chief a story about finding an injured elf in the dungeon and ordering her around like a servant until her sister paid to have her freed. The tribe loved this story so much the chief returned 100,000 gold coins as a gift for shaming the elves so well. The soul engraving process was agony that made him scream. He had to undergo it regularly. Afterward, he bought weapons, custom armor, a helmet designed specifically to stop arrows at critical angles. He left the shopping district with 50,000 gold coins remaining in a body that was finally equipped to fight properly. The days before the next dungeon settled into a rhythm. Mornings with Owen over breakfast, library until 4, sparring with Anna at the Angry Bullhorn until nightfall, late dinner with Owen, who walked several hours each way just to share one meal. He kept meaning to tell her she did not need to do that. He never said it. On the day of the second dungeon, Bjorn and Anna entered at the last possible moment, deliberately, as the entrance magic became unstable. He had read about this. Entering during dimensional instability carried risk, but also the possibility of being deposited directly at the second-floor entrance. Anna panicked in the dark. He lit a torch. The second-floor gate stood open in front of them. He activated it, and the system announced they were the first to open the teleportation gate. Experience points granted, soul level increased by 1. Anna could not understand how they had gotten there without fighting anything. He told her to keep it absolutely secret, and she agreed without understanding why. The second floor's Tomb of the Dead was different from anything he had prepared for. Dark earth that made wet sounds underfoot, air like the inside of a sealed room. Faint crying in the distance that turned out to be banshees who would not attack unless provoked. Anna screamed at the first one and grabbed his neck and nearly collapsed his spine. She apologized and immediately drew her sword and charged a skeleton soldier twice her height. He decided he was genuinely starting to like barbarians. For the first full day, they pushed north through ghouls and skeleton warriors. And Bjorn's immortality technique healed his wounds between exchanges without a potion. Anna stared at the closing wounds with open envy. By day they had killed 70 large undead creatures, each one taking both of them working in coordination. Anna lifting from one side while Bjorn shouted the weight-bearing ankle from the other. The reward per monster was equivalent to 1 piece of cream pie bread. Anna worked this math out loud and then immediately started screaming about how she wanted more bread. Bjorn laughed without meaning to. Then the real test found them. In the deep dark of the second floor, they encountered another adventuring party. Except it was not a party, it was a professional killer. She stood 5'7", lean and precise, with deep red hair and a tattoo under her left eye. For seasoned adventurers lay dead at her feet, all their equipment already stripped and packed. She had done this without taking a scratch. When she noticed Bjorn and Anna watching from the shadows, she asked casually if the two barbarians were together. Anna immediately wanted to fight her. Bjorn grabbed her and ran. They reached the first floor teleportation gate with no margin left at all. In the first floor, he told Anna that the woman was operating on the 8th floor, far beyond anything they could challenge. Anna sat in silence for a while, then said something Bjorn had not expected. She said that the oath she had made to save her life, swearing not to fight, begging to live, was the most shameful thing she had ever done. He looked at her directly and said, "Warriors who survive are the strong ones. Only the living can defeat their enemies." She nodded slowly, then said she thought she understood his general meaning. He decided not to correct her. He lay awake for a long time that night thinking about the way that woman had moved, the short sword slipping through his armor like it was nothing, finding his spine. He thought about the blonde man's team throwing the potion at him like garbage on the dungeon floor. He thought about every moment he had survived by accepting humiliation and working with what he had. Then he changed the plan. If passive survival kept leaving him on his knees, he would stop being passive. He woke Anna and asked her a question, if there was a path to becoming stronger. But it carried real danger. What would she choose? She did not hesitate for even a moment. She said, "We go looking for trouble ourselves." He found the rift space entrance on the first floor, a rare hidden dungeon that almost no adventurer knew existed. A massive stone monument blocked the way, exactly as he remembered from the game. He forced it open using a method he had read about, not waited for, not stumbled across, but deliberately engineered. The dungeon was called Blood Castle. Red sky, flocks of crows moving in dark ribbons, a black fortress against the horizon. He had added an 8th level crystal core when he opened the rift, which was why this dungeon appeared instead of another. 3 other adventurers were pulled in with them. A dwarf named Murad with 3 years of experience, a human man serving as a porter, and a 6th level mage named Lena. Lena immediately declared that she would take all the loot, and that everyone should follow her instructions. The dwarf bristled. Bjorn negotiated. He gave up essences and premium equipment in exchange for priority rights on everything else the dungeon held. They went in. The first stage was a bridge guarded by stone gargoyles that petrified everything they looked at. Lena removed the petrification instantly. The gargoyles became practice targets. The dwarf smashed one into gravel with cheerful efficiency, while Bjorn and Anna handled the other. The second stage required blowing a horn made from a zombie commander's remains to lower a drawbridge while stone creatures boiled up from the blood-filled moat below. Lena waited until they were all in range and then unleashed a whirlwind. That turned every one of them to powder. Anna said, "Now I finally understand why everyone says mages are impressive." But Bjorn had played this game long enough to know, the easier the beginning, the worse the end. He moved through the underground prison quietly, letting Lena collect her specimens, watching the walls for things she had not thought to look for. He had found it already, a female statue that Lena had walked straight past, carrying a hidden item she did not know existed. He filed that away for later. The corpse pile chamber was where everything almost fell apart. Thousands of bodies stacked into a hill of decay. The smell alone enough to make the porter vomit continuously, and the mudge, the anatomy enthusiast, dropped to her knees retching. The hill stood up. It spoke. It threw corpses like cannonballs. The dwarf froze. Lena froze. The porter was already useless. Only Bjorn and Anna were still standing. He sent Anna to protect the others and stepped in front of the creature alone. He rolled. He blocked. He bought seconds. He bought minutes. When Lena finally recovered, she did not cast from behind a wall. She stepped forward, took stock of the situation, and acknowledged what her role actually was. Then she cast flame baptism and burned the outer layer of the creature down to its skeleton. Bjorn and Anna finished it together. When it dissolved, it left behind a rare essence, the corpse bone essence. Bone strength up 55 points, stamina up 21, pain tolerance dramatically increased. A skill called Flesh Explosion that used the character's own body as a detonation source. Serious side effects: acidic blood that corroded equipment, self-damage on use. Bjorn looked at it and thought this was exactly the kind of fortune that preceded catastrophe. He negotiated quickly. He traded the corpse bone essence to Lena in exchange for rights to whatever the final boss dropped. She smiled and agreed and pocketed the essence immediately. Then they reached the final chamber door. The handle was the wrong color. Bjorn had seen that color in forum videos, in footage uploaded by players who had encountered something that should not have been possible. He said, "No, do not open the door." The door was already opening. The ground shook. A blood-red figure sat at the center of a stone chamber, stirring from ancient sleep. Not a standard boss, not even a rare one. A vampire duke, intelligent, named, operating on the 6th floor and above. Duke Campomal, an upper-tier mutant. A monster with individual memories and personal combat tactics. In 9 years of playing, Bjorn had never once encountered this guardian. He had only seen it in videos other people uploaded to forums. There was no version of this fight they could win. He shouted for everyone to run. What followed was a running battle through every corridor they had already cleared. Lena casting while being carried. Bjorn calling roots from memory as the vampire's wraith form flickered through walls ahead of them. They broke into daylight just as the monster's tolerance for sunlight ran out. Lena fainted from a backlash she could not explain. The sun was already starting to set. Bjorn went back inside alone to the statue Lena had missed. He shattered it and found the goddess's tears, a holy relic, one use only, capable of sealing all resistances of any enemy it was placed inside. He returned to the group. Lena was awake but badly weakened. 5 usable high-level attacks, 30 minutes to recharge the dark orb. No sunlight skills. Night arrived. The vampire descended like a verdict. It moved with terrifying intelligence, anticipating every attack before it landed, redirecting momentum rather than meeting force with force. The dwarf held the front with an essence that kept him rooted to the ground, even under direct assault. But after 3 minutes, the vampire was barely hurt and the dwarf was collapsing. Bjorn told Anna to fall back with the dwarf. From that moment, he became the vampire's personal punching bag. He drank healing potions between blows. The pain from the potions was worse than the wounds. Steam rose from his skin as the healing burned through damaged tissue in real time. He blocked vital strikes. He let everything else land. Lena watched from behind a pillar and felt something she had not expected to feel: shame. A barbarian barely out of his coming-of-age ceremony was absorbing punishment. She could not withstand, and he was doing it calmly. She had been the one treating him like a liability. She made a decision. She threw the test tube containing the corpse bone essence directly at Bjorn's chest. He absorbed it without consent, mid-combat, with no time to process what was happening. Pain tolerance spiked by 70%. Muscle strength up 15. Attack intensity up 55. His bones stopped fracturing under the vampire's claws. The acidic blood that now ran through his veins began eating at the vampire's skin, wherever they made contact. He stopped trying to dodge. He charged in. Anna rejoined. The porter joined. Lena threw a high-level potion from a distance and his regeneration tripled. The dwarf, partially recovered, activated the lightning banishment skill, a sphere of electrical current that slammed the vampire into momentary unconsciousness. Bjorn seized that exact second. He forced the goddess's tears into the vampire's mouth and punched it shut. All resistances sealed. Then Lena's dark orb hit him directly in the back. He smelled roasting meat, then nothing. When he opened his eyes, he was alone. The vampire was still alive, wounds knitting back together with horrifying speed. His companions were unconscious, every one of them. The vampire's essential passive: as long as the heart remained intact, it could not die. Bjorn dragged himself to his feet. He crossed the chamber step by step, each step a decision to keep moving. He found the golem essence of skill buried somewhere in his own body. Flesh explosion and activated it against the vampire's chest. The flesh of his own fist detonated on contact. He kept doing it, again, methodically, knowing every use cost him something he was not getting back. His hands came apart. He pressed his chest against the creature's sternum and triggered the skill from there. The vampire dissolved into light. Bjorn fell. He was certain he was dying. He opened his eyes 3 days later to Anna's face. His hands were intact. His skin was clean. His first words were, "Why am I naked?" Anna told him the ruined clothes had been an eyesore, so she had removed them. She said she did not think he would mind. He changed the subject immediately and asked what he had missed. The vampire had dropped 3 top-tier rewards. The dwarf took the ranking equipment. Lena took the enchantment stone. And Bjorn, who had been unconscious the entire time, had absorbed the vampire's essence. Lena had left furious. She had given up the golem essence and the high-level potions and still walked away with the lesser prizes. What Bjorn had now, the Vampire Guardian's essence, was worth more than everything else the dungeon had held combined. He returned to the city. The converted magic stones came to 230,000. Modest, but in this dungeon run, he had absorbed rare essences and one dungeon guardian's essence. His basic stats had changed fundamentally. At the exchange counter, the cashier looked at the volume of magic stones and called the guards. A 9th-level adventurer should not have come out with this much. They took him to an interrogation room. 7 days of questioning followed. The interrogator did not believe the vampire story, did not believe the rift space story, laughed at the scar that had already healed. He mentioned the dwarf and Lena by name. The interrogator ignored him. On the 7th day, they found the communication stone, the one taken from the correction union, the group that had hunted Owen. The alliance leader gave false testimony that Bjorn had killed innocent people and stolen their equipment. The decision came down, execution in 3 hours. Bjorn sat in the cell and looked at his hands and decided he was not going to confess to something he did not do. He activated flesh explosion. His hands reassembled in seconds. He kicked the guard unconscious, took the keys, and opened every cell in the basement. "Come on," he told them. "You are free." The Adventurers Guild Hall exploded into chaos, naked prisoners charging in every direction, adventurers drawing weapons, staff scrambling for cover. Bjorn moved through it all, without stopping, heading directly for the minister's office upstairs. He activated flesh explosion on himself and used the vampire's sacrifice mark. Anyone splattered with his blood became an offering, temporarily flooding him with their strength. Guards, who had seemed insurmountable, took 1 punch each. In the minister's office, he found something he had not planned on, the regional director's daughter. He improvised. He held the position. He sent his demands back down through the building. "Bring me the interrogator. Bring me the Crystal Alliance leader. Bring me a mudge from the Mudge Tower." And on the balcony, he announced his name and his innocence to every person who could hear him. Lena arrived. She had heard a madman had taken a hostage and found it interesting enough to investigate. Personally, when she saw who the madman was, she began cursing at him in a language he had not heard her use before. He asked her to use memory confirmation magic on him immediately. She bargained for a future favor first. He agreed. Even a 6th-level mudge could not break through his mental barrier, a detail that disturbed him more than he let show, so instead she used recording magic to document everything that followed. The interrogator arrived and laid out his case with growing confidence. The communication stone, the equipment, the unverifiable scar, the impossible vampire story. He finished. He felt like he had one. Lena told him plainly that Bjorn had absorbed a vampire's essence in the first-floor rift, and she had been there herself. She said it with the full weight of the Mudge Tower behind her. The interrogator accused her of colluding with a criminal. The room went very quiet. A Mudge Tower mudge does not get accused of lying by a low-level guild employee without consequences. The regional director arrived. The Crystal Alliance leader was brought in. The false testimony unraveled in public in front of a recording. The director declared Bjorn innocent and immediately tried to offer the cheapest possible compensation, a level upgrade. Bjorn was not done. He demanded 5 million gold coins. Everyone held their breath. The director agreed. Lena added that her service fee was 1 million. She did not look at Bjorn when she said it. That night she brought him to her research tower and told him she wanted to study his essences. For 3 months, once a week, 3 hours at a time. He pushed back on the timeline. She pushed back on the terms. And somewhere in the middle of that argument, the old man walked through the soundproof door. He was Diane Basilian, Lena's teacher, master of the 5th floor of the Mudge Tower. He tried a threatening joke. Bjorn returned a threatening joke. Neither man laughed at the others. Then Diane offered him the Frost Soul Ring, number 9425, a numbered unique item, in exchange for the 10 million gold coins Bjorn had claimed Lena owed him for absorbing the golem essence without consent. Diane explained that the ring sealed 1 extra essence skill. It was worth about 1.5 million on the open market. Bjorn pretended not to understand what he was holding and accepted reluctantly. Walking out of the tower, he thought about what the old man did not know. The ring had a hidden function that no one had discovered yet. In the hands of an orc who could not form a spirit beast contract, The ring's destruction would trigger an awakening event. He filed that away carefully and went to find a new room, because the innkeeper had declared him dead and thrown out his luggage. The city that surrounded him was beginning to take shape in his mind, not as a game map, but as a living system with rules he was starting to understand. A few days later, he received word that his fame was spreading in ways he had not anticipated. The story of the unnamed barbarian who broke out of the guild's prison, freed every inmate, and cleared his own name on a public balcony had traveled across the entire city. They were calling him the freedom-loving barbarian. They did not have his real name. Good, fame invited trouble. He kept his head down and returned to his schedule. He sold the equipment from the Blood Castle dungeon. He gave Anna 300,000 out of the split. She stared at the money and then pointed at a vendor nearby selling cotton candy and said someone had put clouds on sticks to eat. He bought her the cotton candy. She cried a little. Over dinner, she told him quietly that since absorbing the Antares essence and shrinking nearly a foot in height, other barbarians had been distancing themselves from her. Humans had started following her around instead, which she found catastrophic. Then she said she could not continue adventuring with him. A swordsmanship master in the Holy Land had taken notice of her talent and wanted to take her as a student. The training would last 6 months, and she could not leave during that time. He had already guessed what kind of swordsmanship it was. He told her this was a rare opportunity. She said she was not asking him to wait. She was not asking him to accept her when she came back. She said only, "I will train seriously and become a warrior who will not hold you back." He watched her leave and said nothing because there was nothing to say. That would matter more than letting her go. He needed a new team. He had absorbed 3 rare essences, Golem, Zombie Giant Passive, and the Vampire Guardian, and his personal combat strength had now outgrown the second floor entirely. But this was a cooperative game. Raw power had a ceiling without the right team. He went looking. At the Adventurers Guild, he found the dwarf Murat again, already planning a new party. A mage named Devaki had applied to join, an 8th level royal mage, who claimed distant noble connections through a chain of marriages. So convoluted it amounted to almost nothing. Devaki was possibly a fraud. Bjorn kept him anyway. A mage drew better candidates. The remaining 2 positions were filled. Rottmiller, a level 7 human pathfinder with 8 years of experience, quiet and precise, and the most reliable person in any room he entered. And Misha, a level 7 orc adventurer, 25 years old, 5 years of experience, who added a strange involuntary sound to the end of her sentences and turned it into a defining characteristic. The team entered the dungeon on a new cycle. They reached the 2nd floor in 10 hours, 3rd floor in 4 days. They entered the Beast Den, the Blackstone Desert, the Tomb of the Dead. The formation held, Bjorn and the dwarf on the front line, Rottmiller reading the terrain with terrifying accuracy, Devaki and Misha providing ranged support and damage. On the iron hills of the 3rd floor, someone herded a wave of monsters directly at their teleportation gate. Classic robber tactic. They had been targeted specifically. Rottmiller identified the ambush by scent, and they adjusted without engaging. But it was not the last time someone tried. In the Tomb of the Dead, a professional dungeon robber appeared. The same deep red-haired woman Bjorn had encountered with Anna. She had been watching from the shadows the entire time, evaluating. In one encounter, she disabled both Bjorn and Anna before they could mount a real defense. This time she offered a deal. Swear not to speak of this, and she would spare them. She said she owed the barbarians a favor. Bjorn agreed without hesitation. Anna nearly refused on principle. He shouted at Anna that protecting her pride was worth nothing if she was dead. Anna swore, reluctantly, shaking with humiliation. Before the woman left, Bjorn asked which floor she operated on. She answered without turning, the 8th. He watched her disappear and made a private promise that the next time their paths crossed, the outcome would be different. He did not know when that would be. He kept it anyway. The new team ran into trouble of a different kind when they encountered the Jaryui organization, a major force from the 6th floor and deeper, blocking the orc encampment on the 3rd floor to hunt a specific monster. An old man spoke with the absolute calm of someone who had not faced a real threat in years. The dwarf pushed back. The dwarf nearly got the entire team killed. Bjorn clamped his hand down on the dwarf's hammer arm and held him in place, and said through clenched teeth that their whole team had almost died because of him. The confrontation ended. They withdrew. What followed that evening was something Bjorn had not prepared for. Seated around a campfire in the dark, One by one his teammates began talking. Misha spoke about the family that had called her a bastard for failing to form a spirit beast contract, about her father's words that had driven her into the dungeon. The dwarf spoke about 10 years as a failed blacksmith apprentice who had turned to adventuring past 30 just to survive. Devaki admitted he had grown up with every advantage and still could not get through the Midge Tower doors. Rottmiller confessed he had been quietly jealous of the others for things they had suffered through. Then everyone looked at Bjorn. The silence was unmistakable. It was his turn. He panicked. He said the first thing that came into his head. He said he had no mother. He elaborated. She died giving birth to him. His father entered the dungeon young and never came back. He had never seen either of his parents. Everyone looked at him with expressions of devastated sympathy. He felt deeply, unpleasantly strange about every word of it. Then he decided to push for the 4th floor. The dwarf wanted to stay on the 3rd and build team chemistry. Bjorn argued they were already ready. They voted. He won. In the witch's forest, things became genuinely catastrophic. A priest of Kaloy found them, Eliza, traveling with a group of adventurers she had deceived into providing cover. Kaloy's priests wielded divine and dark powers simultaneously and were required by their faith to perform regular living sacrifices. Bjorn identified her before she attacked by smashing her head with his hammer. The moment something felt wrong, she came back. He smashed her again. She came back again. Priests of Kaloy did not die easily. The team fought. Misha's ice attribute punches against the undead. The dwarf absorbing frontal charges. Devaki's materialization spell stripping Eliza's ghost form. Bjorn pinning her to the ground with his full weight. They captured her. Then every one of his teammates was knocked unconscious by a delayed sedative curse. Amelia was there, the robber from the Tomb of the Dead, watching from the shadows with a strange expression. They fought. It went badly for Bjorn. She was impossibly fast and the gap between them had not closed. But when she could have killed him, she did not. She handed him a pill instead, Red's blessing, 1 hour of memory erasure. His soul resisted it completely. His memories stayed intact. His teammates remembered nothing after Hans's hiding spot. Only Bjorn carried the full account of what had happened. Meanwhile, separated from the others, Bjorn and Misha spent over 100 hours trapped in the witch's forest alone. The witch's eye activated, a field effect that made staying still deadly, summoning cannibal monsters that could not be outrun. Misha fought the spirit-type monsters using her fists and new attribute power while Bjorn directed and held whatever could be held. A dryad nearly took him. A creature that wore the face of his ex-girlfriend and told him to abandon Misha and come back. He was almost all the way gone when Misha punched it out of the air and shook him back to himself. She had already killed it by the time he was fully conscious. In the chaos that followed, Bjorn made the decision he had been saving the Frost Soul Ring for. He told Misha he needed to form a partner contract with her. She thought he was proposing. He clarified. She agreed. The ring was destroyed. Blue light erupted from Misha's entire body. The glacial beast Scotty extended its contract from the sealed artifact. Misha woke from the awakening shorter of 1 set of clothes and longer 1 spirit beast. She was embarrassed, then grateful. Then she made him swear she could repay him. He made her swear on her guardian deity. She swore immediately and meant every word. With an attribute attack now available through Misha, the spirit-type monsters of the witch's forest were finally something they could damage. Bjorn carried her on his back for 17 hours straight when she ran out of strength. On the 87th hour, they found the witch's cottage, a randomly spawning safe zone that nullified all field effects, and stumbled inside. Inside were several of Eliza's associates, barely alive, terrified. Bjorn assessed them, then ended them. The system confirmed his kill count had crossed 10. The bodies fed into the cottage fireplace extended their safe rest by hours. He lay down in the bed and felt something he could not quite name settle over him. He was fitting into this world more naturally than he had expected, more naturally than he was comfortable admitting. That thought kept him awake longer than anything else that night. Then the cottage teleported them back into the forest without warning. The system announced that special conditions had been met. The floor monarch Weakest had begun its patrol. Bjorn stared at the announcement and thought about the bodies they had burned. 7 total, including for that had already been there before they arrived. Misha screamed at him. He told her not to breathe a word of it to anyone and started running toward the orc encampment. The Jaryui organization was still there. They were fighting Weakest already, a creature that towered over everything. immune to normal damage, regenerating faster than it could be hurt. Over 60 members, 11 dead in the first 3 hours. The adventurers they had gathered for protection were becoming a liability. Bjorn approached the deputy leader Iros and said he could help. He laid out what he was carrying: immortality technique, vampire guardian essence, zombie giant pain endurance, golem muscle strength. Iros asked only one question: can you fight while drinking potions? Bjorn said yes. He was handed the orc monster essence, the hidden demon lord's core, and absorbed it on the spot. He activated Gigantify. His body expanded massively. The people around him stumbled backward. With the full support loadout of a major 6th-floor organization behind him, Bjorn walked directly into Rikis's path and held it there. He was the wall between the creature and everyone else. He took blows that should have shattered him. He drank potions. He kept standing. Then Misha was designated as prey. The selection was random. 1 person in 15. The odds had landed on her. She tried to tell him to leave her behind. He cut through that immediately. He told her she did not want to die, and that saying otherwise was just fear talking. He told her that if she wanted to live, she needed to say so, because that was the only way she stood a chance. She said, "As long as you keep me alive, I will follow you for the rest of my life." He said, "Now that's more like it." The final 2 minutes were the worst thing he had survived in this world. Rika severed his hand. He kept moving. He ran directly under the creature, where its tracking instincts were weakest. When Gigantify deactivated and his mask disappeared, Rikis's killing strike hit empty air. He launched himself onto the creature's foot with his teeth and everything he had left. The dungeon closed. He was inside the creature's claws, being drawn toward its open mouth. When the teleportation took him, in the dimensional plaza, he arrived looking like something that had survived being eaten. The crowd drew back. Someone said, "Injuries that bad. He probably won't make it." Misha found him by his heartbeat and laughed and cried at the same time. He was unconscious for 2 days. When he woke, the news of what had happened on the 3rd floor had already spread through the entire city. Over 30 members of a 6th-floor organization lost, several hundred adventurers dead or missing, and 1 person credited with keeping as many of them alive as possible. A barbarian, 3rd floor, 3 months in. Nobody had heard of him before. They had a name for him now, Little Balkan, after the great barbarian hero. He had not wanted this. Fame invited trouble. He had learned that already, and this fame was enormous. The team reunited 2 days later at a tavern, everyone alive. The dwarf and the others having survived through the 4th floor by accident, stumbling through a changing teleportation gate and finding unexpected safety. The dwarf had even obtained a rare essence from a chest mimic, a subspace treasure vault that dropped $1 million in magic stones and high-grade consumables. Bjorn gripped his cutlery tightly when he heard the number. He congratulated him. He meant it mostly. The team's combined prize money and bounties from the dungeon came to significant totals. Misha handed over her earnings, having sworn they were his during their worst moment in the forest. She grumbled through every coin of it. Devaki's noble brother had revoked his dungeon access out of spite, but Bjorn negotiated with a baron at a tea house, agreeing to perform barbarian tricks at a noble banquet in exchange for lifting the ban. He said he was willing to do anything for his companions, and then privately noted the baron had offered 1 million gold coins. The team kept running dungeons, 4th, 5th trips, the rhythm held. But the world kept moving in ways that had nothing to do with the dungeon. He encountered another player in an alley, a man who had spent 3 months starving and wandering because he was too afraid to enter the dungeon. Bjorn gave him 150,000 coins for weapons and told him to never contact him again. He did not know if that was the right call. He stopped thinking about it. He found a book in the library that should not have existed, the complete record of dimensional rifts, authored by a name he recognized, Oriel Gabbis, the creator of Dungeons and Boulders, written 150 years ago, the same year the game began, the same year the first king died. The coincidence was too precise to be coincidence. If the game's creator had written a book in this world, then Bjorn's arrival might not have been random. Someone might have built this entire system. Someone might have chosen him specifically. He set that thought down very carefully, the way you set down something fragile and dangerous. He would come back to it, after he was strong enough to survive what the answer might be. For now, there were still floors to clear, taxes to pay, and a team that was starting to feel like something he had not expected. The sewer commission introduced him to Sabin from the administrative hall, and a librarian named Rania, quiet, carefully dressed, more capable than she appeared. Through Rania, he accessed classified books that ordinary searches could not find, intelligence manuals, records of dimensional rifts, the organizational charts of Lovdonia's covert security operations. And in one of those books, the name of the game's creator again, this time attached to the history of how these dungeons came to exist. He read until morning without realizing it. When he looked up, Rania had stayed the entire night organizing shelves without waking him. He thought about that for a while before deciding not to say anything. A mysterious letter arrived at his door containing a pill and an invitation. A community of players had formed inside this world. Swallow the pill and enter a spirit realm where identities were hidden. Do not and destroy it. Signed, the King of Lovdonia. Lena told him that inside the spirit world, people appeared as soul forms. No one could be recognized, but intruders had their souls extracted. He decided to wait 3 months before taking it. Enough time for the attention around him to settle. Enough time to reduce the chance that someone would identify him the moment he appeared. The dimensional collapse rumor reached the city before his waiting period was up. A mudge named Schnappelegan had apparently predicted an impending collapse. The rumor spread from every corner simultaneously and left no verifiable trace. He searched for 10 days. No source, no evidence, no name that appeared anywhere in any record. Someone was manufacturing fear deliberately. He did not know why yet. He took the pill early. The spirit world opened around him like a room he had built without knowing it. Inside he found a community for him, other players, many of them veteran arrivals from years before him. The earliest had been here 20 years. The founders had cleared the game 5 years ago and still had not found the way home. No method had worked. No theory had been confirmed. He sat with that information for a long time. But one detail inside the community had shaken him more than any monster or dungeon floor. Back in the real world, a detective team had opened a missing persons case on a man named Lee Han-soo, 29 years old, absent from work for 1 month, reported by his company. His mother's response when contacted had been cold. The surveillance footage showed him walking into his apartment and never leaving. The windows stayed closed. There were no signs of struggle. The clothes in the room looked like they had simply ceased to have a body in them, and a screen that was not plugged in was still lit. The team leader had stared at that screen and felt something shift in his understanding of what missing meant. Similar cases had been documented abroad. Bjorn stared at those words inside his mental fortress and thought about the refrigerator, packed with canned cola that tasted like nothing at all. He was still there. His body was still in that room. Whatever had been sent into this world was something other than his flesh. He returned from the spirit world with more questions than answers, and a clearer sense of what he was dealing with. This was not a glitch. This was not an accident. Someone had designed this. And whoever that person was, whether the creator himself or someone operating at a god-level scale, they were watching. The mysterious man reviewing reports of the third-floor incident had smiled when he read about Bjorn. He had seen talent like this fewer than 3 times in his life. The zombie giant essence, the vampire guardian, the orc hero's core. 3 extraordinary trophies in 3 months. He had wondered aloud, is this one a hero or an evil spirit? He did not answer his own question. He kept watching. Bjorn reached level 6 as an adventurer. He upgraded his equipment with acid immunity enchantments and a hammer built for overwhelming force. He bought gear from Misha sized to her frame, watched her learn to channel the glacial beast's power through twin blades with imperfect but improving form. He completed the 3rd stage soul engraving, Soul of the Wild, and screamed once during the process. The old shaman watched him recover and said, "Be wary of people consumed by deep resentment. You will encounter them often. Easing that resentment is a blessing. Leaving it alone leads to disaster." He did not know what that meant yet. He filed it with everything else he was not ready to use. Anna appeared briefly outside the sanctuary, thinner, running harder than before. She said his expression was different now, less killing intent, more at ease. She said it like she was relieved. He watched her run back toward her training and thought, less killing intent. He was not sure that was accurate. He was just better at hiding what he felt. Rania told him something one afternoon that stopped everything. The dungeon might be approaching dimensional collapse. Not a rumor this time, a specific source, a researcher named Schnappelegan. the same name that had left no trace when he searched for 10 days, which meant Rania had access to information that did not exist in public records. She was not just a librarian. He noted that and kept it carefully to himself and went back to verifying the collapse rumor. From every angle he could reach, the 6th dungeon run went clean. No incidents, no confrontations, no disasters. He did not trust it. The calm surface meant the depth was dangerous. He pushed harder. Misha noticed and asked what was wrong. He told her his expression was frightening her. She offered to let him touch her ears to improve his mood, because her brother had once told her it helped. He told her never to say that to anyone else. She said quietly, "You're not just anyone else." He did not have a response for that. He moved on quickly. The pill had connected him to something larger than the dungeon, larger than the city, larger than the barbarian tribe and the Mage Tower and the regional director, and all the other structures of power he had been carefully navigating. The creator's name was in the library in a book written 150 years ago. The trail was there. It was just buried under 150 years of a world that had continued without anyone meaning to build it. He was a 9th-level adventurer who had reached the 3rd floor in 3 months and carried the essences of monsters that normally only appeared on the 6th floor and above. He had survived execution and imprisonment and floor monarchs and a vampire duke and a priest of an evil god and a robber from the 8th floor. He had done all of it with no plan except stay alive today, be stronger tomorrow. But the question of why he had been brought here, that question was starting to pull at the edges of everything he did. Not urgently, not yet, but it was there, underneath. The way a current is there underneath water that looks still from above. He lay on his bed in the new room that cost twice what the old it had charged, and stared at the ceiling. His hands were whole, his wounds were healed, his taxes were paid. His body was stronger than it had ever been in the life he remembered. The life where he had been sick, where he had played this game for 9 years from a hospital bed because it was the only thing he could control. He thought about that body, still in a room in the real world, surrounded by closed windows and empty cans and a screen that would not turn off. He thought about a detective standing in that apartment trying to understand where a man had gone. He thought about his mother's cold response when they called. He let himself feel that for exactly as long as it took before setting it down. There was a dungeon opening in 9 days. His team was ready. His equipment was upgraded. His soul engraving was at stage 3. Misha could use attribute attacks through both fists and was learning to channel them through her blades. The Vaki's dungeon access had been restored. Ron Miller's pathfinding had been enhanced by the chess mimic essence. The dwarf had 3 years of experience and the stubbornness to throw himself between his teammates and anything that came for them. They were not the strongest team in Lovdonia. They were not even close. But they had survived things that teams twice their level had not. And that, Bjorn had learned, was not luck. It was a habit of surviving. The person he had been when he pressed the confirm button 9 years ago, frail, isolated, playing a single-player game alone in a hospital bed, would not have recognized the man lying here now. He was not sure if that was a loss or a transformation. He was starting to think it might be both. In the report the mysterious man was reading, a note had been added at the bottom. The writer had considered whether this barbarian was hero or evil spirit, and left the question open. What the writer had not considered was a third option, someone who had simply decided to survive. One brutal choice at a time, until surviving became something else entirely. Bjorn closed his eyes. The dungeon would open in 9 days. Whatever was waiting on the next floor. Whoever had written that book 150 years ago. Whatever system had pulled him through a screen and into a body made of war. He would face it the same way he had faced everything else. By being harder to kill than whatever was trying. The city outside his window hummed with its ordinary noise. Taxes and executions and adventurers drinking in celebration of being alive. He had come to understand that noise as a kind of language. It said, this world does not stop for anyone. He had stopped expecting it to stop for him. He had 9 years of learning this game's rules, and now he was learning the rules of the real thing underneath it. The creator's name was in the library. The path back might exist somewhere ahead of him on a floor he had not reached yet. He would reach it. Bjorn, son of Yang Dao, closed his eyes and slept without dreams. And in the morning he would begin again.